Again, everybody, Joe Vosper, 10 billion states. Let's do another video quickly. This is just some thoughts I was thinking about this morning. I thought I'd just get them out there and see what you think. All right. So I'm calling this one "Forget About COVID." Just an essay. I'm just going to read it. Right. Okay. So all around the world now, there's an unprecedented amount of process, and of course, this is a good thing. But have you considered that it is also a form of engagement? Not very long ago, it was reported that in the United States, they had about 85% disengagement with politics. Nobody cared, nobody was watching. Now, have we completely forgotten about the idea that if we ignore these criminals, they might just go away? Okay, so in this video, I want to make an argument that with all of these COVID protests, we might just be playing into their hands. So what's the enemy's goal? It's to frighten and divide us. If we're frightened and divided, they can step in with a solution and they can do something that we can't. They can counter the problem and extort our resources to do it. Now, disengagement was working. COVID's the proof that it was working. They had to go to such extremes because hardly anybody believed in the political process anymore. So how do we ignore COVID? I think it would really help if we remind ourselves of some of the fairly recent history which preceded this current bullshit crisis. And I'm going to start really recently with the 11th of September 2001. Do you remember there was a plane crash in New York and Washington and the World Trade Center fell over? Right, well, for that morning, I considered that I was living through the best day ever. Finally, freedom fighters had made a significant statement and they'd done it perfectly. No or very few innocent people were hurt. 5,000 people who'd been vetted simply by where they were working had been slaughtered, and the odds were that every single one of them deserved it. Okay, sometime that afternoon, I realised the whole thing must have been an inside job. I wondered how much the building was insured for and how much money all of these missing capitalists might have been worth if we could have ever found them and brought them to justice. And I despaired that the turning point of capitalist supremacy hadn't come after all, and the world wasn't going to change anytime soon. Well, of course, I was wrong. The world did change. Tony Blair betrayed the people who had elected him and joined in with 2 wars of conquest, while at the same time destroying cool Britannia and the first chance the British had had in hundreds of years to fix their reputation and rejoin the good people of the planet. Time and again, ever since, apparent opportunities been waved in our faces just to have the veil ripped away and to show us the face of betrayal again. Okay, the Arab Spring fails, and we get a refugee crisis and a nationalist backlash. The US housing market collapses, and the banks are bailed out instead of being liquidated. Jeremy Corbyn nearly gets elected to go after the tax havens, and instead decides to ignore the will of the albeit stupid people and comply with Brexit. So we end up with that Eton shit Cameron winning, and then we got a complete moron taking over. And then we go through the Brexit fiasco, in which instead of beginning the most rapid and widespread political education ever known, turns out to be another chance to insult the electorate. Okay, so just when it looks like these clowns have nobody left to listen, they give us COVID, and the suckers believe them. Fair enough, you're free to disagree with me that Wall Street millionaires deserve death. I won't try and argue. But can you disagree with getting 2 countries for the price of 2 buildings is a bit of a bargain? Tell me what you know about Syria before they decided to bomb it flat. Tell me even now that you know what the hell it was about. By this point in the political narrative, the objection was confusion. A confused electorate who don't understand the circumstances and can't take meaningful part in world affairs. Why don't we understand Syria? Because we're not Syrian. Syria doesn't matter to anyone else but the Syrians because the Syrians have never been allowed to matter. And if you can't raise your country's profile, you can't be safe because you can't control the narrative. Anyway, you look in the Middle East, South America, Africa, it's the same thing. No global profile, latent corruption scandals, political and military feuds, anytime, and with very little effort, these countries can be set up and taken apart. It's actually all you need to know about Syria to this day. It's enough to explain everything that happened to it. And nothing in particular you can say about the specifics to provide any necessary explanation to any part of the war. They're simply interchangeable facts, any which could have been utilized excuse me, to put war back on our screens, spend a ton of military cash and crash economies and buy them back, and to justify further power grabs at home and abroad. Peace doesn't work for people invested in war, and Syria had nothing to do with it whatsoever. So let's retell ourselves some of the other narratives which we've been living. Let's remind ourselves some of the other narratives that we've been living through during our lifetime. Okay, so technology. From the beginning of the internet, there's been some pretty basic goals in mind. Big data, democracy, the removal of the burden of labor from the population of the world, transparent and global egalitarian justice. So from the very start, we knew our goals and how to get there. It began with distribution, and our vehicle was capitalist. We understood the danger of allowing people to start to profit from the internet, which at a very basic level is a cost-free product. Nothing on the internet weighs anything. Nothing on the internet's tangible. It doesn't exist. It's all imaginary. The capitalist illusion of making a fast buck was our pitch to them, and after they bought in, we were able to go back to the real job of building it. And then something happened. Microsoft. Okay, Microsoft broke the law because they were allowed to. I know there was a trial, but how many times did you watch the trial? I think I only saw it about a decade later. Hardly the event of the century, was it? No, Microsoft are responsible for the tech miracle taking 25 years instead of 10. And all these capitalists who have, to this day, very little understanding of what the internet is and can do, maneuvering themselves into positions of monopoly, and of us, the builders of the internet, as theorists, programmers, contributors, consumers, and promoters, losing control of it. Not just the ownership of our data, because it is our data, but of the shape and behavior of the whole internet. Now, the internet, along with the rest of the media, is our enemy, and we're hunted down by it every day of our lives. If there was no Microsoft, we would have built the internet too fast for the capitalists, every one of them being of necessity idiots to realize what our goals ever were. Does any of this sound familiar to you? Because please question anything I say that you don't understand. If I'm not establishing what sounds to me like plain historical fact, that I'm not making an argument you can agree with. All right. Okay, so these days, a lot of people hate technology, and they're right to do so. They haven't really seen it yet. There are a few times when Facebook helped topple a bad government or save thousands of lives in a natural disaster, but they mostly understand technology through corporate media rhetoric. And I'll never forget that company who describes our credit rating as our data sells. That stands out to me as the defining incident of a corporate world taking a shit in my mouth. Okay, fair enough, tear the whole thing down. We can rebuild the whole thing in a few weeks, and we can do it a lot better than we did in the first place. But it's an anger reaction. And you see the same sort of thing with the environment. Now, I have to confess, I haven't educated myself with the environment crisis. It's a big job, and I felt I had to be, all in or all out. And, I just never really looked at it the way some people have. But what I'm hearing more and more is that people saying that they don't believe there's a problem or they don't care about it. And this is because, just like technology, is being turned into a device of torture. Okay, let me tell you about another device of torture, which has been systematically employed against us, but which is a much better candidate for tearing down than technology or the green movement. Okay, the economy. Now, the economy is the real monster of our times, and why isn't there a war on it? When we stand together over that corpse, who are our enemies? They're simply identical to us. What do we lose by it? Now? We're all either a paycheck from destitution or very close to somebody who is a paycheck from destitution. Why not just grab it? Why doesn't anybody see the economy as a single predatory monster that we can and should destroy immediately? Is it because we're all it's infiltrated every single one of us? Well, tell me why that makes any logical difference. Okay, I want justice. I want those tax havens sacked. I want the trial and execution of all the nastier criminals of our age, and so many of them are already dead, and so many of them are dying each year. I want Bill Gates cloned so I can get a fresh one every month for my basement. What are your thoughts on this? Get in the comments. I'll try and read all of the deluge I never get in response to my broadcast and answer as many as I can. See you soon. Thanks for coming. And get me a video editor.